Hello everyone, welcome to your Module 3 Game-Based Learning and Gamified Classroom Desktop Publishing session. We are going to be looking at those topics over this presentation. I'm going to go ahead and actually start the presentation so that my links become active. I highly recommend that you do the same in your presentation as well. All right, and again, this is for our EDUC 3313 course, Integrating Technology into the Classroom. Here's an overview of what we'll be doing this module. We're going to be talking about desktop publishing, some game-based learning, looking at your desktop publishing samples, tools, and templates. Then we're going to have some discussion board questions and then look at your overall assignments and your rubrics to go with it. Okay. Here are our standards. As you've experienced, we always start out a lesson or a presentation with standards. How are we mapping this back to the greater profession and the greater overall goals of what we will be learning? So this time we're going to be talking about designing and developing digital age learning assessments. And this is for ISTE. And then number 5 of your technology or your teaching profession standards, and that your in-task standards, so that's engaging in professional growth and leadership. As an introduction, I want to take you through some of the key thinkers and programs of game-based learning. Now in this module we're going to have several moving parts, that it's a game-based learning and a gamification based content that you're going to be basing your newsletters around. So you're going to see some examples of those newsletters or different desktop publishing potentials, and the desktop publishing is the format. You'll choose a newsletter format or a brochure format or an infographic format. But the content that you're going to have in that desktop publishing item is going to be how you're going to use game-based learning and gamification in your classroom. And I've even actually added in another component for this time, which is perhaps how you're going to involve coding and teaching students coding. So 3 areas of content that you can choose from, and you can do a high-level overview of all 3, or you can pick one and zero in on that. So content is game-based learning, gamification, and or coding for students, okay? And then your format is going to be a newsletter, a brochure, or an infographic, okay? So we're going to go into all of that right now. Here is some background information about game-based learning. Now, with these background resources and information, it's supposed to just, it's basically filler for the recipes. So I want you to absorb all this, and it's some really great resources here. And so for each of the links, I want you to go ahead and follow them. And this, I'm starting off with this for a reason. This is Dr. Jane McGonigal, and you'll see that this video at the time of the screenshot had over 4 million views, and that's because she's a leading expert in games for learning, so game-based learning. And she played lots of World of Warcraft and other things and she designed games at the Institute for the Future in the Bay Area. She has a PhD in something related to game-based learning out of UC Berkeley. So this was filmed in 2010 for a TED Talk, but even still it's one of the leading pieces of background information for game-based learning. So go ahead and watch that. I think you'll enjoy it. She's a highly inspiring speaker, so I think you'll enjoy her. So you'll go ahead and watch that, put my video on pause, watch her, and then come back to me. Okay, so there's Jane McGonigal. And then she wrote a book as well. There's an audiobook. You can listen to it. You can see it's $13.99 on Kindle. And you can also listen to it for $17.95 anyhow. So she wrote a book basically incorporating all the theory and practice that she's learned with games and learning into a book. I think you'll enjoy that as well. I have that on my bookshelf. So another key area that you should know about is our White House Office of Education Technologies. So this is the federal office that is supposed to be leading all education technology efforts. And yes, they do have a Games for Learning sector. So they do game jams where the public, teachers, professors can submit Games for Learning. They have a Games for Learning Summit. And so you should definitely know about this. You don't have to spend a lot of time at each one of these links, but I do want you to spend some time and get some ideas. The purpose for watching the Jane McGonigal video or going to this website or the other resources I give you is to gather ideas for how you're going to design or what content you're going to use in your own desktop publishing item, newsletter, brochure, or infographic. And this is the content. So you're pulling ideas. It's kind of like you're doing research with these different sites and you're taking notes of what you're going to actually include in your newsletter or in your desktop publishing item. Okay, so you can go ahead and just scroll through, look at their main sites. You can also look at some of their games. Here is how to build student confidence through games. Lots of ideas of how to actually use Games for Learning in your classroom. Okay. All right, here's another resource for you. You're going to visit their site. This is Games for Change. Basically, this is a consortium of folks that are doing game design in order to invoke wide-scale change. And so here are some of their headlines. They have games, they have programs, services, they do a festival for Games for Change. You can follow them on social media. Here's some resources for you. I always go to the resource tab because there's usually things for educators to do or to use. Game making tools, look at there. Here's some grants, videos, all of that. So just spend a little time and explore this resource for items that you could actually use in your brochure, okay? Or your newsletter or your infographic. All right. Another one is GLS, Games for Learning and Society. Industry leaders, this is 2 PhDs that research games that are highly published, Kurt Squire and Constance Steinkuhler. They were at University of Wisconsin-Madison, which is why this is hosted on their site. They are now just moving to UC Irvine, University of California, Irvine, so that just happened this year. Anyhow, there's video games they recommend, there's cutting edge research. Go ahead and visit their site and do a little research of your own there. And notice that they've researched there's games, and just look and see what they have to offer for Games for Learning. Okay, and anything they have on this site is highly reputable and you can use with youth. You do need to monitor that it's appropriate for the age level, grade level that you're teaching. So do be looking for that. But many of these items are good examples of how to design games or the affordances that go into designing a game. Okay. All right. So more, and this is gamification of EDU, of education. And this is focusing more on how to gamify your classroom by adding achievement points, by giving students tasks and challenges to make the classroom more fun and engaging for the students, which is different than game-based learning. The previous slides I showed you are game-based learning. How do you incorporate games in your classroom? And these are or game design. So it's more content and curriculum based. So how do you use games within your curriculum, or how do you have the students design games for learning as part of your curriculum? Gamification is more of how do you gamify your classroom to make it like the students are actually in real world game. And all of the affordance that go into gaming you can add into your classroom to make it more engaging and inviting for the students. We'll talk more about that. So go ahead and it says, how can gamification help? And so here's a wiki page which kind of walks you through the gamification of your classroom, and then I'm going to give you some more tools later in the presentation. Go ahead and visit this site and take notes, possibly of ways that you can add gamification to your desktop publishing, because that's the actual deliverable for me. This module is you're going to turn in a newsletter, a brochure, or an infographic how you're going to do gamification and or game-based learning in your classroom. Okay? Okay. One of the key components of gamification and game-based learning is badges, digital badges, and these have been gaining steam and continue to gain steam. It's a great way to help students monitor and measure their achievements. And Mozilla, which was the creator of that web browser Firefox, has been leading the effort in digital badges. And so go ahead and read through this. Here's a good definition. A digital badge is an online representation of a skill you've earned. So think of it as an alternative assessment. And we talked a little bit about assessment the last 2 modules with your rubrics. A digital badge is a symbol of an achievement or a skill that you or your students have actually earned. Also kind of think of it as Boys and Girl Scouts. For every skill or achievement they learned as part of their Girl Scout or Boy Scout curriculum, they get a badge they actually get to wear. Well, this is a digital badge that when your students maybe pass a certain level of reading, they get a digital badge, and it can go on your website, it can go on your learning management system, all sorts of different places, but it's a digital badge that actually reflects that they have earned that skill, whatever you are monitoring or measuring. Okay. I could assign you badges for passing each module, so for each module you get a badge, and I may incorporate that in the future. Okay, so here are some actual principles of game-based learning. And DML goes a little bit further into digital badges. Here's a book on it, What Counts as Learning, and Open Digital Badges for New Opportunities. It's a free download. You can read more about that there. Again, badges I think are a critical component, and many leading scholars see them as a critical component to gamification of the classroom. So here's your free download. And go ahead and read through it. It's 57 pages. I don't expect you to read the whole thing. I'm not going to test you on it, but kind of just look through it and see if there's anything that can help inform how you're going to describe, how you're going to do game-based learning and gamification in your classroom, in your newsletter, brochure, or infographic. Okay. And then I mentioned at the beginning that we also are adding in the component of coding and computational thinking. There is a big new effort by many of the tech companies, Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, under code.org, about teaching coding even as early as kindergarten, first grade to our students in public school, how to code a computer program or a website. Certainly how to think computationally, so computational thinking. And so here's a little article about the difference between coding and computational thinking. You're going to likely be hearing these 2 terms quite often as you move forward, and so wanted you to have this good resource. It also walks you through how to incorporate computational thinking throughout the different subject areas, which I think will be extremely helpful to you because many of you are elementary ed teachers especially. But again, they mentioned code.org in science here. So here's the code.org. This is probably the main website for coding in education and in the basics of teaching everybody how to code, especially K-12 students. Okay. So you can go ahead and read through that. Again, you don't have to memorize everything or read every single word, but start pulling things for pulling content or formatting ideas for your own publication. Okay. Here's another great resource about, this is by KQED. It's free public television. And this is kqed.org. This is the Mindshift Guide to Digital Games and Learning. Mindshift is a great publication to subscribe to about using technology in the classroom, so you want to go ahead and subscribe to that. It's funded by PBS, NPR, donators to it as well. But here's a really great basic guide on how to use digital games in your classroom for learning. Note that the guide is right here, and it gives you a preview of the table of contents. Download it, read through it, pick out things for your own publication about how you're going to integrate technology into your classroom. I think you'll like all that's involved there. All of that content is excellent. So here is a great little infographic for you about 5 simple steps to gamify your classroom. So this is the actual gamification. You turn your classroom into more of a game using game-based principles. So here is 5 simple steps. Step 1, create a website or use your LMS. Here's examples of that: GradeCraft, ClassCraft, Edmodo, Google Classroom, Schoology. Those are all great resources. So you can visit each, just do a Google search for each one. I've used just about all of them, and pick one that you like, and or describe it in your newsletter, brochure, or infographic, and you're gonna select one. Decide the rules. Typically, you want no more than 5 rules. So your classroom, try to not go over 5 rules. I never had more than 4 rules in my classroom, any classroom I've ever taught. And they're general, and then your policies and procedures is where you get more specific about your rules. So high-level rules I would have are be respectful, be responsible. I forgot the third one, but those were the main 2. And then underneath that, and be kind. And then underneath that, I had policies and procedures of what that actually looks like. What does it mean to be respectful? That means that you don't talk when somebody else is talking to you. You address people with their proper titles: Mrs., Doctor, Principal, whatever. Being responsible means turning your work in on time, showing up to school. Those were all processes and procedures, but the overall rules were be respectful, responsible, and kind. Okay, create challenges. What are you, certainly your curriculum is going to be a challenge. Perhaps you're going to say if somebody goes above and beyond, they get extra experience points. So you can include levels, rewards, players, rubrics, objectives, directions, sounding kind of like a lesson plan here. And how are students going to be rewarded for going above and beyond? And then how are you going to motivate those students who aren't quite to where they should be but have the potential to be? Okay, so create those challenges, and every student in your classroom should have a challenge. From the currently lowest performing to the highest performing, you should be pushing each one of them, encouraging each one of them to go to the next level, just like they would be in a game. Okay. Put together a leaderboard, and a little bit of friendly competition is good. Respect their privacy, of course. And how do you protect their privacy while encouraging them to compete? Maybe you have groups of students so that the highest students are only competing with each other. You can reward the students who are the top, or maybe they made the most growth, that sort of thing. Okay. Here's another article on gamification education. Vicki Davis is an excellent person to follow. She always posts excellent ideas, and you will find that that this gamification and education presentation is pretty solid. So notice that there's a game-based learning strand here that you'll want to follow as well, and that will keep you up to date on all the latest game-based learning items. Minecraft.edu. Minecraft is probably one of the leading game platforms that is being used in K-12 education at this point. I plan to have a server running for Southeastern, but in the meantime, you can get on and play with other folks. So go ahead and visit minecraft.edu.com. You can sign up for it. They do have educational pricing, and there's a free to try. So definitely get that. You aren't required to create a minecraft.edu site or login, but I highly recommend it and get the least costly one as possible. Here are some resources about how to use Minecraft. This was created by my friend Dr. Wesley Fryer, And of course, we always give him credit, and I'm grateful that he's willing to share his resources, but these are excellent resources about how to actually use Minecraft in your classroom. And again, if anybody tells me they're doing game-based learning in their classroom, typically they're doing some form of Minecraft. Okay. Lastly, here's Game-Based Learning Roundup, a bunch of game-based learning information for you. Edutopia, a great one to follow again, and gives you resources, articles, videos, all of that on using video games, simulations, gaming concepts in the classroom. Another game-based learning platform that's highly popular is Scratch, which is published out of MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and their lifelong kindergarten program. I visited there, met with their lead designers. I've used this in my classroom before, and it launched in July 2009, so it's been around a long time. They have over 11,000 projects shared, so it's definitely an online community as well, and you basically create stories and games and animations, and I've seen this used in classrooms all the way from kindergarten up for the undergraduate students at UC Berkeley in their computer science programs. So it's definitely here to stay and is one of the leaders in sectors, so a lot of folks use Scratch. Okay, desktop publishing best practice tools and samples. Here is a tutorial from lynda.com. You don't have to do this, but if you want to get more into the background of how to actually design a newsletter and you want to become more of an expert, here is the resource for you. Again, this is not required because you're just going to access a template and modify it. This would basically be creating your own template, but I wanted you to have it just in case. Here's another one again for InDesign, designing a brochure from scratch. Again, you're going to be just adapting a template, but if you wanted to design a brochure from scratch, this is a great tutorial. Here's probably what you will be doing is education templates. They have brochures and newsletters already designed for you. You just have to, and lots of other things as well. So here's brochures. You just click on Browse by Category and choose a brochure that you like. Students really, here's a one-pager, but students seem to really like a trifold. So you can use their stock photos. This one opens up in PowerPoint, and basically you just open it and let me log in, and then just basically type in your own content and add in, and it's going to require you to sign into your Southeastern Microsoft 365 website and add in your own content, which is the game-based learning or gamification information. Sway is an online tool that basically it's an online only newsletter or brochure report. It's published by Microsoft. It's pretty new. Its main competitor is Prezi, but you can definitely create a nice newsletter or brochure in Sway. They have full tutorials to help you learn how to create a Sway, but if you can create a Prezi or a PowerPoint, a Sway is equally as easy. Here is some information about using Sway a little bit more, and this is the e-versions, electronic versions of publications. Here's a video, a short video on that, and you can go ahead and click that link. Here's some more templates for you in Google. They're not as well designed as Microsoft. The graphic design is not as sleek and beautiful, but certainly there's some that are free and you may like them. Generally, they're other teacher-created materials. Here's some that are a little bit more beautiful, created by Apple, and this is education templates for Pages. There are some that are free. If you want the full version, you do have to pay for their added templates. Here are some other potentials for you for e-publications that would be similar to Sway or Prezi. You have Glogster, Letterpop, Mixbook, Booker. You don't have to use any of those. These are all just options for you, and I wanted you to know. And maybe you'll do one of these now, and then you'll keep this presentation and in the future try out a Glogster or whatever. Here's how to create infographics in PowerPoint. So if you're going to do an infographic, go ahead and visit this link, and then that'll teach you how, and I've used this before, it works really well, of just basically a 1 or 2 page back and front infographic where you're mainly focusing on pictures and graphics instead of words, which is perfect for K-12 schools. Here's some already created teacher brochures in Pinterest, and you can get a lot of different ideas on Pinterest for your classroom, so I wanted to make sure I point you there. And feel free to browse around, use one, adapt it for your purposes, give the person credit who created it, but definitely feel free to use and repurpose for your own efforts. Just give credit. Here's a sample, a lesson plan of using brochures to teach informational writing. And basically you're writing a travel brochure. This is a lesson that you would actually create in your classroom. This is a way that you're maybe doing some gamification of your classroom. So this is one sample. Here's a brochure lesson plan if you actually want to do brochures with your students as well. And just as an example, you may or may not use this. Okay, here are your discussion board questions for the week, all centered around game-based learning, gamification, coding, computational thinking, and then desktop publishing. Okay, and that discussion board is up for you. Here is a little bit more information to extend about e-newsletters or brochures. And here's how to send bulk email from Google. So if you have a school-wide list of all the parents and students you want to send your newsletter or brochure out to, here's how to get that done in Google, because typically if you're sending to more than 250 users, the mail service, whatever it is, Google, Hotmail, Yahoo, blocks sending to more than 250 users to avoid spam. So here's how to get around that with Google at least. Here's also some bulk newsletter services if you're sending to large groups again. MailChimp is a free one that is very useful. I recommend it to professionals as well. And you can create the newsletter and send it out by email through their service. Constant Contact is another one. It's a little bit more expensive. It's a paid service, but equally as good. Many universities use this. And here's your step-by-step instructions. You're going to watch and take notes from all the resources I gave you. There's a lot there. You don't have to go through everything in detail. You're really just reviewing and pulling information for your own publication. Make sure you read the Module 3 rubric very carefully. Review the samples, previous student samples I provide you, and the templates. And then you're going to download a template. I highly recommend Microsoft, or go with Sway, or one of the Glogster would be fine too. And then add one graphic or multimedia item per component in the section or panel. It needs to be really graphic based. Any of these things here, minimal words, unless it's a newsletter, but again, keep your writing, your words very succinct. Nobody likes to read a full book with just a newsletter or a brochure or an infographic. When you're finished, your learning partner should assess your work based on the rubric that I provide, and then share your final draft in the discussion board, review that peer review sharing discussion board prompt that I gave you, review other people's work, give advice, and then turn in your final draft by the due date. Here's the rubric again. Read very carefully. Again, the main thing is make it graphic based. I don't want to be reading a book, okay? And neither will your community. And that is it. Thank you very much for your attention. Please feel free to contact me if you have questions or concerns. Post in our helpful Q&A discussion board, and I'm excited to look at your final projects and products. And thanks for all your great work so far.